Hello, this is Jethwaney. Today we are going to talk about corporate social responsibility, its concepts, role and scope in India. And we are going to discuss broadly the following. We'll define CSR, the genesis, how it all started, theoretical construct of CSR, various phases of CSR in India, the amended Companies Act and the scope and impact of CSR. Now, corporate social responsibility is a very value loaded term which means different things to different people and organizations. Marketing the cheapest car in the world, the Nano, was seen as an act of social responsibility by Tatas. The group chairman believed that this would help the lower income strata to partake the pleasure of a risk-free ride when compared to riding on a two-wheeler. It's a different story. The Nano didn't do very well. There's no money for guessing why. Before marketing its soaps in the rural India, the Hindustan Unilever, now it's called the Unilever, educated the rural folks about the gains of personal hygiene and cleanliness. A Swasth Chetna Divas, health education days, were considered by the company as a step towards its social responsibility. I shall show you a very interesting video at the end when in last Kumbh they stamped the rotis to remind people of the use of, to use the lifebuoy and to clean the hands. The Tata Group a few years ago announced the launch of Swachh, which is in English pure, water filter, which was priced at 999. It was, I think, January 2010, to address the issue of clean drinking water in India to combat waterborne diseases. The price was such that the marketing figures now tell us that a lot of people in the cities also are buying this Swachh from Tatas. It was again seen as an act of social responsibility. The setting up of large public sector in India post-independence was seen as an act of social responsibility and social good. It's a different matter that most of the public sectors stopped earning profit thinking it was a dirty word. Till in 1990s, the government was on spree of selling the public sector which were not making profit because the whole paradigm had changed. Over a period of time, the concept of corporate social responsibility, in short CSR, has come to mean what the corporate gives back voluntarily to society from the revenue they earn. The word responsibility implies that the giver must identify the task that it has to be responsible about. In other words, the act of corporate social responsibility needs to be preceded by a thorough audit of the stakeholder needs that calls for social intervention. You would recall there was a lot of corporate philanthropy which went on for a very long time, and it was always seen that there are beneficiaries versus the givers. Now we talk about right holders, people who are given, they are beneficiaries, but they have a right to that extra excess income which people earn and they give it back to society to do some good. Is CSR a corporate communication tool or an area of pursuance? Let us discuss a little bit so that we understand, because you see mostly corporate communications criticized for using CSR to gain positive publicity. Let's look at the argument. CSR has always been a part of a company's ethos. It's only recently that it has become mandatory especially for the public sector enterprises in India and under the Companies Act 2012, and it's almost compulsory for the private sector also. The argument against corporate communication handling CSR are as follows. There is a possible criticism of CC taking publicity perspective to garner positive publicity for what they do under the CSR. In this case, the PR or the CC leverages CSR for image making. Many companies have issued ad campaigns based on their social commitments like Tata Environment Protection. You have seen Jagore campaign by Tatas. You have seen the Aircel campaign, Save the Tiger. Now it depends, what is that you want to do? Would you like to use communication as a CSR for advocating a certain issues, or would you like to build schools, hospitals, or so different companies have different take on CSR. Define corporate social responsibility. The World Bank has defined CSR as an operating a business in a manner that makes or meets or exceeds the ethical, legal, commercial and public expectation that society has of business. To make a good product, to sell at a reasonable price is what every company does. What is that a company does beyond that, the profit it earns from, how much would it like to take it for itself and how much it would like to give back to society really comprises CSR. Marlin Baker refers CSR as a way companies manage their business processes to protect and produce an overall positive impact on society. R.J. Carroll describes CSR as a multi-layered concept that can be differentiated into 4 interrelated aspects as follows: economic responsibility, legal responsibility, ethical responsibility, philanthropic responsibility. At the bottom of the pyramid is the economic responsibility, which has to be the best, because if you don't earn profit, no one has business to be in business. Followed by legal, that you must do your business through legal means and under the law. And ethical responsibility is what you must give back to society, which has given you what you have. So at the top of the pyramid is the philanthropic responsibility. Now let's look at how corporate social responsibility concept came about. The concept of CSR is not new, except probably the terminology. Its roots can be traced back to all religious scriptures that exhort people to share their fortunes with the less privileged ones. Businessmen over the years have also included philanthropic works of various kinds. It is said to have happened as an act of corporate social responsibility when in 1790s, England witnessed the first large-scale consumer boycott over the issue of slave-invested harvested sugar, which finally forced the importer to have free labor sourcing. And nowadays you must be also finding on the net and also in the media, mainstream media, that many big companies in America and elsewhere in Europe, they outsource their production work in third world countries, in India, in Vietnam, in Philippines, and Bangladesh, and at a very low price. And these issues have made rounds in the media and had reached in the public sphere. And there's a lot of criticism of those big companies who are, exploiting the poor labor in third world countries. And in order to avoid that kind of criticism, it is believed that these companies are into a lot of philanthropy, a lot of corporate social responsibility. In fact, the story of Pepsi and Coke has been doing rounds for very long. In fact, there was a number of cases also in the court, especially the Kerala High Court. And these advocacy organizations, which are critical of these multinational organizations, went even up to the colleges and universities in USA and exhorted people not to drink Pepsi and Cokes because they were exploiting the poor in the third world countries, and they're taking away all the groundwater, and it had its impact, It was seen that many people gave up on drinking Pepsi and Coke. So in order to avoid that kind of criticism, in order to continue with the business, these companies have been doing a lot of CSR work in India. Like Coca-Cola has been doing the rain harvesting projects, especially in Rajasthan, where they are trying to bring back to life those old Boweries and all, which used to have water hundreds of years ago. So one is that you do it out of philanthropy because you must do it. The others that you do it because there's so much of criticism, you want to avoid that criticism, you want to digress attention, is for you to take a call what is right, what is wrong. CSR in India, many analysts feel, can probably be traced back to the time when the Tatas set up their business, Tata Iron and Steel Company, in 1907. The Jamshedpur plant today is seen as a gigantic social outreach program that covers 600 villages in and around its manufacturing and raw material operations through initiatives in the areas of income generation, healthcare, education. I was also informed that in Jamshedpur, even there's a water is clean. People in Jamshedpur get clean water thanks to Tata CSR initiative. It is also known that Tata's also set up Adityapuram for ancillary work for Tatas through small scale industries, and the engineers would go and also teach and educate so that the people can earn their livelihood by manufacturing small little nuts and bolts which were required for the Tata industry. The term CSR came to common use in 1970s. In the 1990s, the concept was fully recognized. As per research in 1977, less than half of 500 Fortune companies mentioned the term CSR in their annual reports, but around 1990, 90% companies in the Fortune 500 list had CSR reflected in annual reports, and in today's world, almost every company has a CSR as part of their milieu. In the 1990s, one saw growing concern about the ways the multinational companies did business in India because it was an era of liberalization. As I just said, it was also seen as a violation of human rights, and there was a Swadeshi movement also which was going on for anything which would happen in companies like Kentucky's Fried Chicken or McDonald's or Pepsi or Coke will make headlines in the newspapers. And these companies saw that it was not very easy to do business under such circumstances, so they pumped in a lot of money in the CSR, looking at the areas which were required. Now we shall look at the various phases of corporate social responsibility in India. Ethical model, which is said to be in existence in 1930s to 1950. This model promoted the concept of trusteeship, revived and reinterpreted by Gandhiji. Under this notion, business were motivated to manage the business entity as a trust held in the interest of the community. The effort of the Tata Group in the beginning can be said to be inspired by this model. In fact, a very interesting campaign by Tatas which you might remember.
परिवारों में खुशहाली लाते हैं, सुख का संदेशा पहुंचाते हैं, राहत का रास्ता दिखाते हैं, हर खेल में सफलता पाते हैं, जीवन में रंग लाते हैं, इस बात भी हम बनाते हैं.
What they try to say by this mission statement is that steel, that we also make steel is very incidental. We are into the nation building. We are part of the nation building exercise. The second, phase is said to be called the liberal mode from 1970 to 1990s. This model was propounded by Milton Friedman. According to this model, CSR is confined to its economic bottom line, which implied that it was sufficient for business to obey the law and generate wealth, which through taxation and provide charitable choices can be directed to social ends, which means that if you are doing business, you must earn profit, and out of that profit, you can think about some charities and give some money in philanthropy to meet the social ends. The third phase is called the stakeholder model, 1990s until present. The model came to be in being during the 1990s as a consequence of realization that with growing economic profits, businesses also have certain societal roles to fulfill. The model expects the companies to perform according to triple bottom line approach. The business also focusing on accountability and transparency through several mechanisms. In fact, if you look at most of the large companies, they have sustainability reports. Tata's has been doing a sustainability report every 10 years, which audits its various processes and works which it does. And interestingly, in that committee which it makes is generally headed by a retired Supreme or High Court judge, which has people from civil society, well-known people. There's only one facilitator from Tata's, and they do the process check, they do audit of various marketing, selling, the assembly line, everything under the sun what Tata does, and they have that marking of the red, yellow and green. If it is the red, it means they must improve, they must do something, it's a panic button. If it's green, which means they are fulfilling their benchmarks. If it is yellow, so it is high time they should pull up their socks and see. So, and all these reports are in the public domain, and which you can see yourself and also encourage your students to see. There are other companies which bring out sustainability reports in black and white. There's e-versions also, and in most of these you find the top people, some of their wives or the daughters could be heading the CSR. But now that because it has become mandatory post 2012 Companies Act, especially with the public sector, about which we'll talk a little later, now more and more companies are required under law to reflect in their annual report and also do a third party monitoring and evaluation of the CSR work which they have undertaken to see how it has changed their lives. Let us look at some of the global practices in corporate social responsibility, some cases in point. More than 225 investment companies with assets worth over $3 trillion US, including Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs and AIG, have signed carbon disclosure project under which the companies are requested to share carbon emission data by posting it publicly for all investors, so that in case people are not interested to invest in those companies, they have every right not to do that. In the USA, 279 cities have signed a Kyoto Protocol. The state of California has passed a legislation to reduce emission from all industries by 25% by 2020. Very interestingly, the state sued 6 of world's largest automobile companies, including General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, Honda, Toyota and Nissan, on the ground that greenhouse gases from their vehicles have caused damage to the environment worth billions of dollars. The lawsuit, according to media reports, is first of its kind to focus on manufacturers' liability for damages caused by their vehicles. In India, as we all know, that we have to go for vehicle pollution test every 3 months or every 1 year. It's the first time at least USA has made the companies responsible for contributing to the greenhouse gases. As I said in the beginning, the companies take their own call what is that they would like to do. Would they like to open schools? Would they like to do community centers? Would they like to support the schools by augmenting their libraries? In fact, the info says CSR concentrates on giving books and all to the library so that children can study. Premji Azim's foundation, in fact, it's on record that he put his more than 8,000 crores of his personal wealth into school education by augmenting the training of the teachers. And now I recently have heard that they have come out with a Premji Azim University, and the courses are basically on development communication. So a lot of people are doing it more than what is required by law. Especially the Premji Azim's case is a case in point. And if you look at 2 other three big philanthropists from over the world, Warren Buffett has put in more than 90% of his wealth in CSR. Bill Gates has put in almost all his money in CSR. Even Mark Zuckerberg, who is a young guy, even he's putting a lot of money in CSR, because ultimately money has value only when you share with it. Money has no value if you don't use it, it's just lying idle. So if that concept has been picked up by a lot of philanthropists. In fact, Bill Gates calls himself full-time philanthropist now. So and it's not that they are only doing it for their countries, because their footfalls are everywhere. Warren Buffett's money through CSR and for health, education, even Bill Gates is all over the world, especially Asia and Africa. So a lot of catching up needs to be done by the Indian industries, but you do find a lot of philanthropists from overseas working relentlessly in India. So one is that I said that you do things at grassroots level to bring about change. The other could be that you use communication to advocate about various issues. Save the Tiger was done in conjunction with 3 major organizations: Aircel, which is no more there, that mobile company, NDTV and World Wildlife Fund. So they had a telethon which they conducted about 7-8 years ago, in which the idea was to create awareness about saving the tiger. and it was accompanied by a very nice campaign, by Aircel, that how the poachers were poaching and killing the tigers, and how the population of tiger had come down to just less than 1,200. And what they did was, thanks to NDTV's reach, and any news channel for that matter, so they had their programs outside every major sanctuary, in which they announced, in which they invited a lot of people, the politicians, the lawmakers there, environment ministers there, there were artists there singing, dancing, there were students doing their programs. The whole idea was to create an awareness for 12 hours non-stop, about the need to save the tiger. Then Amitabh Bachchan was roped in, and his things were on auction, and people were supposed to give donations. And there was one guy, I think one Mr. Parekh, who said that I will double the donation what comes on the NDTV. By the end of the 12 hours, I think they were able to get about a few crores, 4 to 5 crores, which was doubled. Now 4 to 5 crores is not a big amount in terms of for any company to pay at one go. But the whole idea was to involve the entire country into that movement, that how important it was to save the tiger. And after 2 years, when Mr. Javadekar was the environment minister, I think he still is the environment minister, he announced that the population of tiger had gone over 2,000. So if you can, create so much awareness and bring about such a change that within 2 years the population of tiger is more than doubled, I think this advocacy really worked extraordinarily well. Then we had about 7-8 years ago, Tata Tea starting the Jagore campaign. It was basically exhorting the youngsters to wake up and go and vote. And along with that campaign, agar aap vote nahi de rahe to aap so rahe hain, it's a very good campaign. They also had a website in which they exhorted youngsters to register as voters. And the empirical data tells us that many thousands of youngsters registered, and it created a lot of awareness. Then Times of India had come out with a very interesting campaign, Teach India, in which a lot of youngsters participated and they started teaching. Then they had another campaign, Lead India, in which they were trying to find a right person to be a politician. They did it only 1 year. Then they had another program called Aman Ki Asha to create people to people kind of relationship between India and Pakistan. Then Idea Cellular had a very interesting campaign, Kya Idea Sarji, in which they'll pick up social issues and give a commentary on that. So all these are also part of CSR, depending on what is that you wish to do. Now we look at public sector enterprises and the CSR initiative. Now if you look at public sector's history immediately after independence, India received a very truncated economy. India was not as you see it now. India was more than 500 small little states, principalities, and then India got divided in 1947. The resources were divided, and population was increasing. And the one thing which could do, and Mr. Nehru's vision on socialism, so public sector was given a lot of precedence, and public sector came about to be a part of the nation building, which it did. And a lot of public sectors in the mother industry, larger areas came, and also in smaller industries, even in bread, you had a public sector, Modern Bakeries India Limited, which supplied nutritious bread under the midday meal programs to many schools. So CSR per se was not known, but community relations was as a very important part of the ethos of the public sector. I know of many public sector undertakings who opened hospitals to the villages around, because public sector was almost throughout the nook and cranny of the country. And because wherever they set up their factories, where they set up their projects, a lot of people were affected, so they looked after them. And though it was not called CSR, but a lot of facilities were made available to them. It's only in 2010 when it became mandatory for the public sector undertakings to use money from their profit in the CSR activities, and in 2012 it became mandatory and the percentage was also set up. Now the companies which are less than 100 crores, if they are earning less than 100 crores, so 3 to 5% of profit would go to the CSR. Companies which are earning from 100 to 500 crores, 2 to 3% would go to CSR, and companies which earn 500 crores plus, then it will be 0.5%, 0.5 to 2% would go as a CSR budget. Some of the guidelines for the public sector undertakings include the following. Loss-making CPs are not mandated to earmark any specific budget for CSR. The implementation of CSR will be part of the memorandum of understanding they have to sign with respective ministries and the Government of India. The performance of CSR activities would be mandated by the concerned ministry periodically. The CSR budget expenditure performance would be reflected in the annual reports of all the central public sector undertakings. The CSR projects, as I said earlier also, would be independently evaluated by a third party outside agency. And this also gives little areas about what CSR work they can undertake, which includes drinking water supply, education, electric facility, solar lighting system, health, irrigation, sanitation, pollution control, animal care, promotion of sports, environment, livelihood for weaker sections, relief to victims of natural disasters, supplementing government's developmental programs. If you recall, when the Swachh Bharat was announced by the Prime Minister from the ramparts of Red Fort by the PM a couple of years ago, he was exhorting the public sector undertakings to supplement the amount in the Swachh Bharat, and many public sectors have indeed done it. The other areas include scholarship to bright students from SC, ST and OBC categories of students, skill training, building of roads, etc. So all put together, you have about a little less than 300 central public sector undertakings, and when you put the CSR amount of all these, about 50 are loss making, the rest of them make profit. It runs into thousands of crores, so it makes a very good amount of money. I personally have a little different take on this. I personally feel that instead of trying to give money in small little areas, areas of CSR work, in case the entire public sector can pick up 2 issues and put that all the money in that, I think a real change can happen. So before I stop, I'll advise, or rather request you, that you can involve your students in a very interesting exercise. Ask them to do pick up 2 competing companies in the public sector or private sector, follow their CSR. It's all available on their websites now because it's mandatory, and see what is that they are doing. And if they are doing some work at the grassroots level, especially around the place where your college, your university is located, tell the students to go in group and go and talk to the people, the supposedly right holders, to see how it has changed their lives. And I'll also show you a couple of documentaries, one by the public sector and one by the private sector, to make your own decision about whether it's publicity oriented, or it's really talking about the change they are bringing. Thank you so much.
छह दिसंबर और 17 जनवरी सारे देश में राष्ट्रीय पल्स पोलियो दिन मनाए जा रहे हैं।
इन 2 दिनों में आप अपने 5 साल और उससे कम उम्र के बच्चों को नजदीक के टीकाकरण केंद्र में ले जाकर पोलियो के 2 खुराक दिलाइए। इससे पहले आपने अपने बच्चों को चाहे जितने भी पोलियो के खुराक दिलाए हो, उनके अतरे किए 2 खुराक जरूरी दिलाएं।
भूलिएगा नहीं, 6 दिसंबर और 17 जनवरी।
Diarrhea still kills 1.1 million children annually in developing countries. Lifebuoy believes this can be averted. The Mahakumbh Mela India 2013, the largest religious festival on the planet. Over 100 million people come here. to pray together, live together, and eat together. Lifebuoy soap saw this as the perfect opportunity to convey an important message. Always wash your hands with soap before you eat. Our medium? The roti or Indian bread. Served with almost every Indian meal. And the only way to eat it is with your hands. We created a heat stamp capable of leaving a simple message on a roti. Did you wash your hands with Lifebuoy? And over 30 days, a team of 100 people stood in 100 kitchens, stamping over 2.5 million fresh rotis, helping us to reach out to over 5 million visitors at the Mahakumbh Mela.
लाइफबॉय से हाथ धोए क्या?
लाइफबॉय से हाथ धोए.
So, will people remember to wash their hands before their next meal? Let's pray they do.